Starstruck.
Well, welcome back to Joyride. I am Jared Brandon Flandy, and
I am Adam Mendenhall.
this is the show where we talk about all things transportation and adventure. And since this is our latest episode, how are you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing all right, but I do have a question here for you. What is one of your favorite British cars of all time?
Ooh, I have to go with a Aston Martin DB5.
Now, that is an excellent choice, but I do have an extra question for you. What do you think of Triumphs and MGs?
Both those cars are fun for the countryside, open road enthusiast, or avid winery visitor.
And on that note, I'd like to actually mention something from one of our sponsors who specializes in those very kind of cars. And this is from British Parts Northwest. So, since 1982, British Parts Northwest has been your source for all your British car needs. They have knowledgeable staff who can help you find whatever you need to make sure your car is in the best condition possible. They carry quality parts brands such as Lucas, TRW, and Borg & Beck. British Parts Northwest is based out of the United States but ships both domestically and internationally and offers same-day shipping as well. You can place your order by phone by calling this number, 503-864-2001. That number again is 503-864-2001. You can also place your order online by going to bpnorthwest.com. Remember to spell out the word Northwest. British Parts is celebrating its 40th anniversary by teaming up with the Starstruck Podcast Network to bring you hit shows like Joyride. To claim 10% off on your next online purchase at bpnorthwest.com, use discount code Joyride. That's discount code Joyride. We'd also like to give an additional shout out to Noah Norwood of the Hot Rod Kid podcast. He brings in all sorts of different automotive enthusiasts as well as other people involved with the hot rod community. He also is a professional restorer of classic cars such as 1960s Mustangs way back to the old V8s from the early Ford era. And once again, his podcast is the Hot Rod Kid podcast, and we do strongly suggest you listen to that. Other than that, we'd also like to point out, Adam, that we do have some social media pages. If you are a listener to the show, that might be an extra bonus to you. We have a Instagram page, which is Podcast Joyride. That gives you some of the visuals that you might not be able to really get with if you're just listening to us. But if you go to that, our Instagram page, you can see some of the things we're talking about. Also, our parent company, where some of these episodes are also located at, is starstruckcompany.com. It also features other projects me and Adam have worked on, including The Half-Life of Genius, a documentary about Raymer Schreiber in the early atomic age, which is available on Amazon Prime currently. Other than that, this is going to be a casual chat episode. And Adam, would you please tell me and the listeners what we will be having our little chat about today?
Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about iconic movie cars, past, present, and the future. Where is it going? What makes a car iconic to endure the ages?
What do you think makes a classic movie car that endures the ages?
Well, obviously, aesthetic design, eye-catching. A lot of it has to do with just the core model of the car itself. And, of course, I'm sure people already have an idea where we're going to go with this with a few examples. But, you look at right off the top of my head, the Ecto-1, the Ghostbuster car. I mean, that was a 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor Centennial that they used as a base for that. And, that's just, that has some lines that just seem to be timeless in a way, but also take you back to a particular era of the 1950s.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was that an ambulance originally?
Yes, majority of them were ambulances. Some were used as hearses, but majority of them were ambulances. And I'm going to be wrong on this number, but I know there was less than somewhere around only 100 produced, or less than 100 in exist. I think only less than 100 in existence today. That's what makes them so
really?
valuable. And everyone that wants to build an Ecto One, I mean, to get one of those cars, even a rust bucket, I mean, it's just extremely difficult. Let alone the price is typically pretty steep.
So they used them both as ambulances and hearses? Is
Yes.
that they were retrofitted for that? Well, I think a hearse is obviously appropriate for Ghostbusters, but
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, for that aspect.
okay. So kind of on that note, do you ever remember that movie? I mean, it's very obscure these days, I know, but Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox, like right after Back to the Future, where he was the doctor,
Yes.
and they had he was supposed to be like working as a small country doctor, and I remember the gal that worked as the ambulance driver. It was something kind of like an Ecto One. It was a really old school style ambulance.
It was, yeah. I'm trying to think what era that one was from. I want to say it was late '60s, early '70s, but it was very similar in some regards, but just a different model vehicle. Yeah, yeah.
Imagine if you call up 911, you're like, oh my god, I'm having appendicitis, and one of those goofy looking things pulls up in your driveway.
Yeah. It's just, I guess there's too many similarities between that and the hearse. Obviously, even today, right?
No, it's like it's the wrong message.
It's the wrong message. Yeah.
It's like, if you might make it, but if you don't, well, this will double as another vehicle.
Yes. 2 for 1. 2 for 1. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but it's just, I mean, look at that car. I mean, what a great job. Obviously, Dan Aykroyd had a lot of involvement with the design of the car, all the modifications that were made to make it the Ghostbuster Ecto One. And here we are, nearly 40 years later. I mean, it's 38 years this year that the car still is ever popular as it was back then. The few models that are in private ownership where people have retrofitted that era of car to an Ecto One. I mean, talk about a showstopper and a crowd gatherer. I mean, that's just it's a huge attraction. And it's just one of those things that again, it's just amazing that it maintains its popularity amongst the generations yet today.
And I think I said it one of the episodes this season. I was at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, and they did have an Ecto One there.
Oh,
I don't know if it was, they call it, because there's picture cars in general. That's what they call it in movies. The cars that literally are in the picture. Aptly named. But then there's what are called hero cars. And hero cars are the car where it is the most photographed of all the different, because they use usually different copies of the same vehicle depending upon what they need. So I don't know if that was a hero car, but I did see one. That was really neat to see up close.
Yeah, it's something else. A buddy of mine about 10 years ago, he was working for Discount Tire down in San Diego, California, out in La Jolla, a wealthy area. And there was a local gentleman there that actually owned and had a legit Ecto One, fully modified to be as movie accurate as possible, and he brought it in to have the tires changed. And that there was a crowd of people gathering around that, just seeing that car parked at a Discount Tire and then up on a lift. Yeah, it was.
That's probably the most exciting thing. It's been at Discount Tire for a very long time.
Yeah, actually, I think it was.
All right. Well, aside from the Ecto One, what is another car that really stands out to mind? A movie car that stands out to mind to you?
Well, again, same era. I mean, there's a couple more. Prior to that, needless to say, the Batmobile, whether it was the Adam West 1960s version, or you get into, of course, what we grew up with, the Michael Keaton 1989 Batmobile. Which was essentially a modified or stretched Corvette, extremely modified.
Oh, really? Right.
To get that shape. That's another one. And there's just, the Batmobile, there's just so many different versions over the years. Michael Keaton had, essentially the same car in 2 movies. And then you move on to Val Kilmer, who had a very different car. And then after that, we get into, the Christian Bale, where that was neat in its own regard, because that car was completely made from scratch to be the Tumbler, the Batmobile of its day, and it was fully operational and functional. It wasn't just a prop car. I mean, that was even featured on Jay Leno's Garage, which is really neat.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in a second here, but I want to go back a little bit. Let's start at the Adam West Batmobile. Of course, that was the lightest the Dark Knight has ever been.
Yeah.
What was that? Because I have seen one of the Batmobiles once again at Peterson, but what was the base of that? Do you know?
Let me check here.
It was something. It was a mainstream car, wasn't it? And
It
then,
was,
yeah.
yes.
And then they modified it to make it look more, Batmobile-esque, if that's
So
a word.
that was roughly, it was a 1955 or 56 Lincoln Futura car, a concept car that was modified by famed Hollywood car designer George Barris.
Oh, so it was a concept car. Okay. That's another thing that always kind of grinds my gears is like when any manufacturer comes out with a concept car, it's just like, why don't they just make it look like that for the production model?
Sometimes, they get it right out of the gates.
Yeah.
You wonder why they didn't carry on more of the features into the production
It just
model.
they look cool. Concept cars always look cool. I mean, they always do. And then when you get up to the Michael Keaton era, which I think is, or the Tim Burton Michael Keaton era, which I think is, really still stands up pretty good in terms of Batman movies to this day.
Yeah, it's very arguable, still the most iconic. And again, this is a very big debated topic amongst the internet and fan groups of Batman. But that one, really, the imagery of the car is very much arguably the most iconic of the Batmobiles over the years.
And you said it was a Corvette base?
Yeah, Corvette base. Yeah, it was. And, part of it might have been, that movie was a huge success. And then again, the marketing that went with it. You remember back as we were kids, they had Batman on everything. It was just everywhere. So, that juggernaut alone really kind of cemented it in pop culture on its own.
And I'm not having a go at Marvel, so please don't anyone take it that way. But I remember, growing up, Batman was the superhero. And maybe a little bit with Spider-Man, when you got into that Tobey Maguire era. But when the Marvel Cinematic Universe came on, it was like, Iron Who? It's like, who, a lot of people were not very familiar with it at that time, those Marvel characters.
No, they were not. No, absolutely not. Batman goes back to, you're looking at the late 1930s, early 40s there. That was, Bob Kane, the creator of Batman.
It just had been around so long.
Along with Superman. So, yeah, it's, it really had quite an evolution with the character over the years.
And so if we move on to the Tumblr, and I'm getting my source here, it was an old Top Gear episode, but I think they said it was a British-based company that had built that, and they were the only engineering firm that said we think we can do it. Everyone else said no, I don't think it's possible. But obviously they made it happen, and it actually isn't just a prop; it's a functioning vehicle, right?
It is, yeah, and it operated off of a GM small block V8 that was high output. I think it was right around 500 horsepower, maybe 550. On the high end V8 that powered the vehicle, and it was fully functional. It was really neat to see that. I didn't even know until after the movie had been made, and it was featured on a couple different shows, including Jay Leno's Garage, of how legit that was. They took it out on the open roads there in LA and drove it around.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me mentioning, this one, I know it might seem a little basic, but probably one of the most iconic movie cars of all time is the Volkswagen Beetle via Herbie, of course.
Herbie the Love Bug.
And I realized that, it's a Disney movie. It's not quite as heavy as some of these other ones we're talking about, but they went through a long list of cars before they settled on it. They looked at MGs. They looked at, I know for certain, all kinds of things like that. And eventually they settled on the Beetle because it just looked the most friendly, was my understanding.
I could see that, especially for, that was a movie that appealed to, children, obviously, and, was entertaining for adults alike. So, it was, and such again, another iconic car of the era that was repurposed into a race car and immortalized in that regard.
And, it looked cute on the outside, but the inside it wasn't. They basically tore out, this is my understanding anyway, all the stock Volkswagen stuff, and they put in Porsche motors and that kind of thing.
Did they?
Yes, because Volkswagen and Porsche are pretty much cousins to each other, so it was pretty easy to make them fit. But that's how they made those go faster than an actual Beetle could go. Mind you, they did do, and I don't get me wrong, I've used some of these little practical effects on the scenes I've shot. But what they would do is they would take dirt and they would shovel it and spread it out against the sides of the road, and then they'd have the stunt driver intentionally drive over those piles of dirt and make that poof effect to make it look like it was going even faster. I mean, it's simple, but it is effective. It really does work.
That is. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All the little tricks they used to use.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah, there's a lot of neat ones. And, of course, this one has been covered on previous podcasts. But the 81 DeLorean, of course, of Back to the Future. I mean, that's arguably the most popular, if not right there. I mean, equally with the Ecto-1. That car, again, what they did with it, modifications, a lot of, random parts and pieces that they put on there that were off old, from military surplus, variety of components that have since been obviously identified by many people, and those cars have been reproduced. There's people like Bob's Prop Shop who will modify and convert your current DeLorean into a Back to the Future DeLorean. And I mean, as close as screen accurate as you can get. And he's done, I forget how many cars at this point. I mean, it's somewhere around 30 to 50 cars, wow. I think, that he's converted. So,
and how much do you know roughly that costs to do?
So, I can't speak for the current time, but in the past it was roughly around 50 grand.
Yeah.
You provided the DeLorean, and then the conversion was another 50,000. So typically, if you're going to buy one already converted by him, they easily, and he's had them go for a variety of prices, but typically they go between 100 and 150,000.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, if you're buying one right just by itself already converted. So
oh yeah, that is neat. I saw one of the original DeLorean or Back to the Future DeLoreans at Peterson too, and I literally just stared at it probably for about 10 minutes. It's just knowing that I mean, it was one of the hero. It was the hero car that was, because they had a handful, but that was the only hero car that was in all three.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so just like, it was almost like, I don't know, staring at the Queen or Marilyn Monroe or something like that when, in real life,
It's something else. The only one I've seen, I've seen a couple in person, but one that was screen used for sure and it was left just rotting on the back lot at Universal Studios.
So sad.
It was the Part 3 car that had been modified with a Volkswagen chassis, and it had the time circuit board on the hood still, and it was just sitting out in the sun in the back lot. It was like, oh my God. And that car, since then, they've done something with it. I know it's been restored or sold off, but at that point in time, and this is in the early 90s, mind you, it was still just sitting on the back lot. But it was like, oh my God, it's something to see.
Now, my understanding, because I've probably like you, I've watched about every bonus feature on every edition of Back to the Future has been released since Lord knows when. And I think they said, I remember one of the featurettes they had was that the prop designer, production designer, one of the two, the original one they had, he gave all these sketches, and the DeLorean was much more futuristic. It looked much more complicated and spacey. And Zemeckis and Bob Gale, who wrote and directed it, they went, no. It's supposed to look like he made this in his garage.
Yes, and they really put emphasis on that, thankfully, because the conceptual drawings were they were very Blade Runner-ish, futuristic and beyond, and they really wanted to bring it back down to being more grounded of, you got to make it look like this guy, he's doing this in his garage, so it's got to reflect that.
And I think they weren't displeased with the first guy's designs. I mean, because he was very talented, obviously. It just wasn't what they were looking for, essentially. And if you go back and you watch Back to the Future and you look at all of Doc Brown's labeling, it's one of those classic, ka-chunk, 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 things
yep.
on the plastic that he just stick on things, almost like a label maker today.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure our listeners know exactly what label maker they're talking about, but I grew up with those. I remember my dad actually had one of those. So yeah, old school from the 70s and 80s for sure.
And then of course they had the one from 2015, which is weird to think that the entire Back to the Future trilogy is now in the past, but
it is. I mean, it's still timeless. For example, my niece is watching it for the first time right now.
Oh, really?
So I'm curious to hear her take on it. And I told her you have to watch this in sequential order. Do not bounce.
No,
start one movie and then go back to the other. But so it'll be interesting to hear the new generation and their take on it. So yeah, it is kind of tough. It has a lot of entertainment value, but as with the years pour on, obviously it's becoming a little more and more dated. They just didn't jump far enough in the future. And hey, Blade Runner, for that matter, I mean, Blade Runner came out in 1982, and hey, 2019's in the rear view mirror. And again, we don't have those flying cars yet. So
yeah. On that note, was it the sequel is 2049? Correct.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I love how they kept that idea, that 1980s idea of the future. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, they literally kept that, you might say, timeline alive, and they kept the symmetry there, and they did it so well. I mean, just especially by the way the movie shot and the sound and the soundtrack with Hans Zimmer was just absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, it makes you feel like you're back in the 80s again, but it is the future of that original timeline.
I don't know if anyone else noticed, but in the early 80s, mid 80s, French cars like Peugeot and Renault were actually kind of starting to make a entry into the American market. It didn't really end up working. But did you notice that the car that the main character has in 2049 is a Peugeot? It's a flying Peugeot. Did you ever catch that?
Oh, I did. That's right. It does have the Peugeot label on that. That's right. Yep. Gosh, that's...
And I still like how they think, because in the 80s, they didn't know any better, but, I like how they kept in that timeline where Atari is still like Apple is now. It became the dominant electronics manufacturer
of the time. Yeah, I think the other big player in the original movie was like TDK. TDK was huge in the future, or supposed to be. I mean, they're doing their best estimates for what they were working with at the time. Who's going to be the most successful companies there in the future.
All right, so we got the DeLorean across. All right, well, actually, before we move on, I want to move on or talk about a little bit about the Old West version, or not the 1950s version that went to the Old West, obviously. Mm-hmm. I love that it had white walls on it. I always was really thrilled by that.
Yes, I was too. I thought that was great because it really, that again, staying grounded to, he's having to fix this thing out of it. I mean, he's just a scientist working out of his garage. And so what is he going to do? He only has 1950s parts and pieces as resources. So they really played true to that, especially when they're looking at the original time circuit that burnt out, going, how this little piece of junk, caused such a big problem. And he goes, look, here's the issue. It was made in Japan. And then Marty corrects him. What are you talking about, Doc? All this best stuff is made in Japan in the future.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but it takes a huge circuit board of, transistors and 1950s electronics to basically perform the same function. So, no, that is one of my favorites, honestly, is that car, just because it's so heavily modified to, get him to the past from the 50s. So.
Yep, and of course, even the highest strength alcohol couldn't power its engine, so you had to use a train to push it along.
That's right.
Well, that was a big one. It was the DeLorean. What's one more two you have in mind here? Extra movie cars here.
Oh boy, we've mentioned again previous podcasts, but the Mad Max, of course, that kind of comes in. It's old and new. I mean, 2015 wasn't that long ago when we had Mad Max Fury Road, and the old Ford Falcon, reared its appearance again there.
But I was disappointed because in Fury Road, it's just so brief. It was just at the very beginning,
It was at the beginning, and then you get a glimpse of it towards the end because the villains of the movie actually fix the car, and it's grinded down, so it's all chromed out and reflective, because it has no paint, so it's just raw metal. But you do see it towards the end there when he goes, "That's my car," and then it gets destroyed nonetheless. But that's another one that you don't see as much today, but every once in a while, depending on what car show you're at, there's a number of people that have theirs modified because that car was readily available in Australia, more so than the States, but there's a number of people that brought those over in the popularity, especially in the late 70s, early 80s. But yeah, where does the future go? That movie, speaking of that movie, I know they're still trying to work on a sequel, but a lot of that's been caught up and just...
they're doing a series coming up, right? That's just about Furiosa, was my understanding.
Yeah, that's the
prequel.
Prequel that's getting worked in, so... yeah, it's hard to say where that'll go.
Well, I'll be excited for that. You know, another kind of oddball, not oddball one, but fun one is the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang car.
That is another good
Well,
one.
JCB Heavy Equipment.
Yes. Yep.
The owner of JCP, or at least he did in the past. I don't know about now, but he used to own one of the cars they used in the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. Of course, English-based company of JCB. So,
And
yeah.
if anyone doesn't know, I mean, the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang movie took a big leap from its source material, which was a book, but it was also written by Ian Fleming, who also wrote James Bond.
Oh, I just learned something today myself.
And if you read the original novel, I think I have it somewhere, it basically is a James Bond book for kids. It really is. He wrote it for his son Casper, was my understanding, because I think it was one of those, like, his wife was like, write something for our kid for once.
Oh, my gosh.
Or something like that. But
Oh, that's interesting. Huh.
and I think, to kind of wrap things up, we really want to do a whole episode on this on its own sometime. But one of my favorite car movies of all time is Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Both the remake with Nicolas Cage and also the original, very limited budget one from the 70s.
Yeah, that is. And, again, the most recent one with Nicolas Cage from 2001, I mean, the 1967 Shelby GT500 KR with that paint job. And just, that car, it was made, I guess it was reignited the popularity with that movie, reignited the popularity of the car to where they're still making kit cars today.
The Mustang, right?
Yeah. Yep. The Eleanor.
Eleanor,
Mustang is what it's called. And, extremely popular. Again, just another car that was, from a particular era and iconic on its own, and then put into pop culture. And here we are. We're still talking about it today, and you still see them today, depending on what car show you're at or where you're at.
Now, I believe, kind of calling back to our Herbie reference, as Herbie and Eleanor are the only two cars to get a billing in the credits as characters.
That's right. Eleanor did get. Now that you mention that,
Eleanor,
I remember seeing that.
Starring
Eleanor. In the car.
Well, I think we're going to start wrapping things up on this little casual chat. Do you have any last comments, Adam, before we do that?
The last thing I have to say is just, it's hard to say, and you just imagine where are we going to go into the future? Will there be cars in the future that are going to be as iconic 30 years from now or 40 years from now as, the 1981 DeLorean or the 1959 Cadillac Meteor Miller Ecto 1? It's hard to say. I certainly hope so. But I think it's getting more and more difficult for designers to come up with something that's truly going to endure the decades and be part of pulp culture. But I'm hoping things do come to pass.
Excellent. Well, with that said, just so everyone knows, we will be back for another episode here. Please, by all means, give us a good like. We love good likes. If you can leave a preferably positive comments about our show, that would be great too, in whatever podcast app you use. And by all means, check out those online links or online sources we've also given you, including our Instagram page, which is Podcast Joyride, and also our parent company's website, which is StarStruckCompany.com. There's all sorts of fun things there as well. So with that said, I think we're going to sign out, Adam.
Sounds good. Till next time.
Until next time, signing out.